I want you to try something this evening. Go find the oldest mirror you can get to. Not the one in your bathroom. That's almost certainly modern float glass, with an aluminum backing sprayed on at a factory. Look for an antique mirror, something from your grandmother's place, from an estate sale, or from that dusty corner of an antique shop where the furniture is too heavy to shift and the glass has darkened at the edges. Stand before it, study yourself, and you'll notice you appear different. Not radically different, not like a carnival mirror. Different in a subtle way that's hard to put into words. Your skin looks warmer. The shadows on your face seem deeper. Your eyes have a different quality. Something about the pupils. Something about how the light sinks into them instead of bouncing off. That reflection has a quality modern mirrors lack. Depth. As if the glass isn't merely showing your surface, but drawing something out from beneath it. As if the mirror is seeing more of you than you're used to having seen. I noticed this years ago, standing in a hallway of an old house in upstate New York, looking into a mirror that was probably 150 years old. The reflection wasn't inferior to a modern one. It was simply different. And that difference wasn't damage, age, or flaw. It was character. That mirror was doing something to light that my bathroom mirror doesn't do. I filed that observation away as a curiosity until I began researching the history of mirror manufacturing and uncovered something I haven't been able to stop thinking about since. They changed the way mirrors are made. Not bit by bit, not through a slow evolution of craft. They changed the fundamental chemistry, the essential physics of how a mirror captures and returns light. And that change happened within a specific window, the mid to late 1800s. The stated reasons for the shift don't fully explain why the old method was abandoned so completely, so swiftly that within a single generation, the mirrors humanity had relied on for centuries had nearly vanished. That raises a simple but crucial question. If the new mirrors were simply better, why does standing before an old one feel like seeing a different version of yourself? Let's start with what mirrors actually were before the change. Because the history of mirror making is one of the most fiercely guarded trade secrets in manufacturing. And the full story has rarely been told. For about 400 years, from the early 1500s to the mid-1800s, the finest mirrors in the world were made using a technique developed on the island of Murano, in the Venetian lagoon. The Venetians didn't invent mirrors, but they refined them to such an extent that Venetian mirrors became one of the most valuable luxury goods in European history, more valuable per ounce than gold, more sought after than silk or spices. So valuable that the Republic of Venice classified mirror making as a state secret and confined its practitioners to Murano under threat of death. Glassmakers who tried to leave the island, who tried to take their knowledge to rival nations, were hunted by Venetian agents. Some were killed. That knowledge was treated not as a craft, but as a strategic asset, a source of power so significant the state was willing to murder to protect it. The silence was deafening when I asked myself why. Why would a republic built on trade and diplomacy treat the making of looking glass as a matter of national security? The standard answer is economic. Venetian mirrors were enormously profitable. Protecting the monopoly protected the revenue. And that explanation holds true as far as it goes. But it doesn't go far enough, because Venice produced many valuable goods, glass of all kinds, textiles, ships, and none were guarded with the lethal intensity reserved for mirrors. Mirrors were different. Mirrors were special. And the deeper I dug into the Venetian technique, the more I began to grasp what made them special. Venetian mirrors, and the mirrors European craftsmen eventually learned to make after the techniques were smuggled out of Murano in the late 1600s. were produced using a tin mercury amalgam. A sheet of tin foil was laid on a perfectly flat surface. Mercury, a liquid metal, was poured over the tin. The mercury bonded with the tin to create a reflective amalgam. A sheet of glass was then carefully slid onto that surface, pressing out the excess mercury. The glass was weighted and left to rest for weeks, sometimes months, while the amalgam cured and adhered to the glass. The process was painstaking, slow. It required extraordinary skill, and the mirrors it produced were unlike anything in modern manufacturing. The tin mercury amalgam didn't reflect light the way modern mirrors do. Modern mirrors use a thin coating of aluminum, sometimes silver, deposited on glass through chemical silvering or vacuum deposition. That coating is microscopically thin, uniform. It reflects light with clinical precision, bouncing photons back at exactly the angle they arrived. The reflection is sharp, bright and flat. It shows you what a camera would show, a surface, an exterior. The tin mercury amalgam was different. The layer was thicker. Not perfectly uniform, it had a molecular structure that interacted with light more complexly, absorbing certain wavelengths, softening others, creating a reflection that was less a perfect optical bounce and more a conversation between light and metal. The result was a reflection with warmth, with depth, that rendered human skin in tones modern mirrors don't produce. That showed shadows with a gradation and subtlety photographers spent thousands trying to recreate with lighting gear and editing software. The old mirrors didn't show you less, they showed you differently. And that difference wasn't a flaw. It was a quality that 400 years of Europe's most skilled craftsmen had deliberately cultivated, as if following instructions they didn't fully understand. Now the change in 1835. A German chemist named Justus von Liebig developed a process for depositing a thin layer of metallic silver onto glass using a chemical reaction. The process was simpler than the tin mercury method. Faster, cheaper, no months of curing. No need for the extraordinary skill of a Murano-trained craftsman. And no mercury, which the official narrative stresses was toxic. The health argument became the spearhead of the transition. Mercury was dangerous. Mirror makers suffered mercury poisoning. The symptoms were devastating tremors, cognitive decline, organ damage, madness. The phrase, "mad as a hatter," comes from the mercury used in hat making, and mirror makers suffered similarly. The silver process eliminated mercury, safer, better, progress, and all of that is true. Mercury is toxic. Mirror makers did suffer. The silver process did remove those health risks. I'm not disputing that. But the official explanation, as so often happens, uses a genuine concern to mask a more complex truth. Because the health argument wasn't why the transition happened. The health argument was why the transition was accepted. The real reason was economic, industrial, structural. The deeper I looked, the more the timing of the mirror transition aligned with the broader industrialization of manufacturing in the mid-1800s. The tin mercury process was artisanal. It required skilled craftsmen working slowly with expensive materials. It couldn't be industrialized. It couldn't be scaled. It couldn't produce mirrors at the volume and price point a rapidly urbanizing, rapidly consuming industrial society demanded. The silver process could. It was a factory process. It could turn out mirrors by the thousands. It could put a mirror in every home, every shop, every public space in the industrializing world. And it did. Within decades of Liebig's process being commercialized, the tin mercury mirror was effectively extinct. Not because it was worse, but because it was incompatible with the economic system, replacing the world it came from. The pattern repeats with unsettling precision, a superior artisanal product refined over centuries, demanding deep skill and slow process, replaced by an inferior industrial product that can be manufactured at scale and sold at a profit margin the artisanal product could never match. The same pattern I've found in food, architecture, medicine, every domain where traditional knowledge met industrial capitalism. The product that serves the body better loses to the product that serves the market better, every time. But with mirrors, the replacement carried an extra dimension that the replacement of, say, lard with seed oil didn't. Because a mirror isn't just a tool. A mirror is how you see yourself. For most people, it's the primary mechanism of self-perception. The image in the mirror is functionally your face, not your actual face, which you can never directly see, but the face you know, the face you check each morning, the face you carry in your mind through the world. And when you change the mirror, you change the face. This raises a question I can't stop sitting with. What did people look like to themselves before the mirror changed? The tin mercury mirror, with its warmth, depth, softer rendering of light and shadow, showed people a version of themselves that the modern aluminum mirror doesn't show. That old reflection was gentler. Not blurred, not distorted, gentler. It rendered skin with a luminosity modern mirrors strip away. It showed the face as the eye actually sees it, with the subtle warmth and variation direct human vision perceives, but that a flat, clinical, high reflectivity surface eliminates. The modern mirror shows you a face lit by its own harshness. Every pore, every line, every asymmetry rendered with an unforgiving clarity that the human eye looking at another person directly would soften and contextualize. The modern mirror doesn't show you what you look like. It shows you what a machine sees when it looks at you. And that difference, the gap between how the old mirror showed a face and how the new one shows it, might be one of the most psychologically significant and least examined changes in the history of daily human experience. The deeper I went into the history of self-perception, the more I found that the modern epidemic of appearance anxiety, the obsession with flaws, the multi-billion-dollar skincare, cosmetics, and surgical industry built on the conviction that the face in the mirror isn't good enough. The timeline of all this aligns with the transition from old mirrors to new ones. Not perfectly, not exclusively, but with a consistency that made me uncomfortable. Before the silver mirror, the reflection you encountered every day showed you a version of yourself that was warm, softened by the physics of the reflecting surface. In a sense, kind. After the silver mirror, and even more so after the aluminum mirror that followed, the reflection became clinical. The face in the mirror became a problem to be solved, rather than a presence to be encountered. And the industries that profit from that problem, the industries selling you solutions to the flaws the mirror reveals, those industries could not exist without the mirror that reveals those flaws with such unforgiving precision. I'm not suggesting mirror manufacturers conspired with cosmetics companies. I'm suggesting something that doesn't require conspiracy, that when you change the technology of self-perception, you change the psychology of self-perception. And when you change the psychology of self-perception, you create markets. Markets for correction, markets for improvement, markets for the endless, profitable, never resolved project of making the face in the mirror acceptable. The old mirror didn't create those markets. The old mirror showed you something you could live with, something that looked like you, as the people who loved you saw you. Something warm, something human, something that didn't need fixing. The official explanation collapses here, because the narrative of progress tells us modern mirrors are better, sharper, more accurate, truer. But truer to what? Truer to the optical physics of photon reflection, certainly. But truer to the human experience of seeing a face. Truer to the way your mother sees you, when she looks at you across a room. Truer to the way candlelight falls on skin, the way the eye perceives the person it loves. The modern mirror is optimized for precision. The old mirror was optimized for something else, something we don't have a scientific word for, because we stopped valuing it before we thought to name it. And here's the thread that won't let me go. The Venetians killed to protect the secret of their mirrors. Not the secret of making glass, but the secret of making that specific kind of reflection. They considered that knowledge so powerful, so important, so dangerous in the wrong hands, that they treated it as a state secret for centuries. What did they know about what a mirror does to the person standing before it? What did they understand about the relationship between reflection and self-perception that made the quality of the reflection worth killing over? We'll never know, because the knowledge wasn't written down. It was held in hands and in practice, in the specific gestures of craftsmen who poured mercury over tin and waited for something to emerge that they understood through experience rather than theory. And when the industrial process replaced them, that knowledge didn't transfer. It couldn't transfer. It existed in a form factories couldn't replicate and economists couldn't value. So it disappeared, like the reflection in an old mirror when you turn out the light. I'm not telling you old mirrors were magic. I'm asking what we lost when we changed how we see ourselves. I'm asking what it does to a civilization across generations to grow up seeing itself in a reflection optimized for clinical precision rather than human warmth. I'm asking whether the face in your bathroom mirror is really your face, or whether it's a version of your face produced by industrial chemistry, a version that makes you look slightly worse than you are, slightly more flawed, slightly more in need of the products arrayed on the shelf beneath the mirror. I'm asking what you would see if you stood before a mirror made the old way. And I'm asking why that mirror was taken from you before you ever had the chance to look. Handed a reflection and told it was the truth. What else have we been handed and never thought to question?